Most self-improvement advice is obsessed with adding things, and that might be the problem. Add a habit, add discipline, add a morning routine that requires a personality transplant. Meanwhile, nothing ever leaves. You just pile it all on and call it growth. This is one of those videos that pretends to be calm and reasonable while quietly pointing out that a lot of what you tolerate is optional. I'm not above this. I've spent years optimizing things that should have been deleted. If this resonates, feel free to like the video or subscribe, mostly so I don't feel like I'm talking to myself at 1 a.m. The interesting question is, what happens when you stop adding and start removing instead? Number 1. Fake emergencies. When did everything become urgent except the things that actually matter? You feel it the second your phone buzzes and your brain goes, this could be important, even though it's never been important before. Most of what you respond to immediately is just someone else being bored, anxious, or mildly impatient, and somehow that becomes your responsibility. I used to treat notifications like medical alerts. Turns out, none of them were. Urgency is loud. Importance is quiet, and they don't travel together. If you wait a little, most emergencies either solve themselves or reveal they were never real, which sounds freeing until you realize how much time you've been donating to things that didn't ask for it. Number 2, mental and physical mess. Once you stop reacting to everything, you start noticing how much background noise you live in. Not dramatic mess, the boring kind. Half-finished tasks. Tabs you swear you'll get back to. Notifications that don't say anything but still demand attention. Your brain treats all of this like open loops, and it doesn't care that you've labeled them later. I kept telling myself I worked better in chaos, which felt smart until I realized I was just stressed with a personality. Clearing this stuff isn't about becoming minimalist or enlightened. It's about removing static so your thoughts can finish a sentence. And when they finally do, you notice something else getting in the way. Number 3. Overthinking everything. Most overthinking is just fear wearing a lab coat. It sounds responsible, analytical, like you're being careful. In reality, it's your brain running simulations to avoid committing to anything. You replay conversations that already ended. You analyze decisions that don't matter. You treat choosing lunch like it might alter the timeline. I've done this with confidence, which somehow made it worse. The fix isn't deep insight. It's making small decisions faster and letting them be wrong. Nothing bad happens. You just move on. And once you experience that a few times, it becomes obvious how much time you are spending trying not to move at all. Number 4, the I'll do it later attitude. At some point, you started believing readiness was a real place you could arrive at. Like one day you'd wake up prepared, motivated, and mysteriously free. So you postpone things until future you shows up with better energy and a clear head. That person never arrives, but the waiting becomes a habit. I was very committed to this strategy. I planned things beautifully. Executed almost none of them. The truth is, you don't delay because you're lazy. You delay because starting imperfectly feels like evidence. Evidence that you might not be good at the thing. Doing it anyway solves that problem fast. Not emotionally, practically. And once you start moving, you realize another quiet habit has been watching the whole time. Number 5. Comparing yourself to others. You're not insecure, you're just constantly observing highlight reels. You scroll through people who seem productive, calm, attractive, fulfilled, and somehow always well lit. Then you compare that to your actual life, which includes emails, dishes, and the same 3 thoughts looping in your head. It feels like a fair comparison until you think about it for more than 10 seconds. I used to tell myself it was motivation. It wasn't. It was just exposure. The fastest way to feel behind is to watch someone else's edited progress on repeat. Quietly reducing that input doesn't make you better. It just stops you from feeling worse for no reason. And once you stop measuring yourself like that, another habit starts to look unnecessary. Number 6, explaining yourself to everyone. Why do so many of your decisions come with a press release? You change something small and suddenly feel obligated to justify it to people who weren't affected and didn't ask. I did this constantly, over-explained choices I'd already made, hoping for approval disguised as understanding. The cost isn't the talking. It's the subtle permission you give away every time you explain yourself unnecessarily. Explanations feel polite, but they're expensive. They drain energy and keep you mentally rehearsing a version of yourself that needs to be approved. Saving explanations for people who actually matter creates space. And in that space, something else quietly reveals itself. Number 7. Trying to please everyone. At some point, you confused being agreeable with being good. So you say yes when you mean no, show up when you're tired, and commit to things you immediately regret in private. It feels generous. It's actually avoidance. I was very polite for years, and somehow always exhausted. People-pleasing isn't kindness. It's fear with manners. Fear of being disliked. Fear of tension. Fear of being the problem. The cost shows up slowly. You lose time first, then energy, then clarity. Saying no feels selfish until you realize how much of yourself you've been quietly giving away just to keep things smooth. And once you stop doing that, a different kind of conflict shows up. Number 8. Useless arguments. Not every disagreement needs your participation. Some conversations aren't discussions, they're performances. You enter thinking facts will help. They won't. I used to argue like it was cardio. Comment sections, group chats, hypothetical debates no one asked for. Winning felt productive until I noticed nothing actually changed except my mood. Being right doesn't fix much. It just keeps you busy. Peace, it turns out, is more efficient. Letting people be wrong feels uncomfortable at first, especially if you're very correct. But eventually you notice how much energy arguing was burning. And once that energy stays with you, it gets harder to ignore what you keep telling yourself. Number 9. Thinking like a victim. You can be hurt and still be responsible for what happens next. That's the part no one enjoys hearing. It feels safer to repeat the same story about why things never work out. It explains everything. I told it convincingly. The problem is, the story doesn't just describe your life, it quietly limits it. Victim thinking feels honest, but it freezes you in place. Nothing is your fault, so nothing is yours to change. Rewriting that story doesn't mean pretending bad things didn't happen. It means deciding they don't get to narrate everything forever. And once you make that shift, one final pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Number 10. People who drain your energy. Some relationships don't explode. They just slowly lower the temperature of your life. They're not dramatic enough to justify a clean break. They just take a little more than they give every time. Conversations feel heavier afterward. Boundaries feel rude. You tell yourself it's normal because nothing is technically wrong. I stayed in these dynamics longer than I want to admit because leaving felt like overreacting. It wasn't. Energy drains don't announce themselves. They normalize themselves. Quietly distancing doesn't make you cold or cruel. It makes you honest about what your time actually costs. And once you stop carrying other people's emotional weight, you realize how much lighter everything else feels. What's strange is none of this requires a big decision. No announcement. No new personality. Just a few quiet absences where things used to be. And that feels underwhelming, which is probably why it works. Most changes don't arrive like events. They show up like empty space and wait to see if you panic. I usually do. I fill it with noise or productivity or something that looks responsible. But every now and then, I don't. And nothing bad happens. Things just get a little clearer, calmer, less crowded. It's also uncomfortable because removing things doesn't give you anything to point at. There's no proof, no before and after photo. Just fewer reasons to feel tired for no obvious cause, which is an annoying kind of progress. The kind that only matters if you're paying attention. And once you notice how much of your life is shaped by what you tolerate, you start wondering about the opposite. Not what else should go, but what, if anything, is actually worth keeping. Not because it looks good or sounds healthy, but because it quietly gives something back. That thought tends to drift into another one, about the few activities that don't drain you, don't impress anyone, don't optimize anything, but somehow change how your days feel anyway. The kind that sneak up on you over time. And that's usually where the next question starts forming, even if you don't say it out loud.